What are you seeing that companies are doing from the healthcare marketing side that they might not realize is either illegal on the border that they have to think about before going to market?
The biggest area of non-compliance that I regularly see, and the most with the most dire ramifications, because if you market wrong in the healthcare space, we trigger federal anti-kickback and state anti-kickback laws that have felony criminal implications. The good thing about being a healthcare attorney, especially in the DME space, as you guys see and what you're doing, there's never a dull moment. What is the rule today is an exception or is changed tomorrow. It's always just a matter of staying on top of the latest and greatest. We want our clients to stay in business so that we can continue to service them. And if they're not aware of the laws that affect them, they're not going to be around very long.
Michael Silverman, we got you on the podcast. How's it going?
Doing awesome. Hey, Alex. Hey, Wayne. How are we doing today? Good to be here.
Doing awesome as well. Appreciate the time.
Perfect. Yeah, no, this is great. We've been organizing this for some time. I'm glad that we actually got to make it happen. Michael, for everyone who doesn't know who Michael Silverman is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and just tell us about your firm?
Absolutely. So I'm Michael Silverman, as Alex and Wayne introduced. I am the founding partner of a law firm based in South Florida called Silverman Bain, and I have been in the DME space for quite some time. A large part of my practice entails advising DMEPOS providers all around the country on regulatory compliance with respect to Medicare, federal regulations, buying and selling their practices, and overall ensuring that they're operating in a way that is in compliance with all the rules and regulations of the payers and applicable laws. For better or for worse, I'm born and raised in the DME industry, so I'm here whether I like it or not, just based upon all of the information that I've been imparted and everything that I've been through in my personal experience. Back when I was 10 or 12 years old, my family started a DME business in our family's garage back when Medicare didn't take issue with you having a business out of your garage. And, as that business grew, I grew over time, got to see it go through a lot, by the time I graduated law school in 2013, it became one of the largest direct-to-consumer DME and pharmacy providers in the country, competitive bid winners. And so I got to see the family business go through a lot of different iterations and hoops and hurdles. And I take the good, the bad, the ugly that I've seen in that business and in my practice since, and try to impart that upon my DME clients and prospective clients across the country. Just as you guys know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and non-compliance, the ramifications are pretty nasty. So, as Nico Health does and my firm does as well, just try to really get out there, educate folks in this space so they can make informed business decisions.
Wow, Michael, you actually, we usually start this off by asking, how did people find their way to DME? So thanks for doing our job for us and answering.
Like I said, whether I like it or not, I'm here, right?
Usually it's usually some, like we've heard some interesting ways people have got into a lot of family businesses though, but did you always want to be a lawyer? Or did you ever think about, or did you work in the DME, or how did you get into law essentially?
So I didn't always want to be a lawyer. Growing up as a Jewish guy from South Florida, it was like be a lawyer or a doctor. My father's essentially, my father is a chiropractic physician growing up, and he got disabled in a bad car accident, couldn't manually manipulate folks anymore. And that's when he opened up the business from our family's garage. And, it was really cool. It went, again, the different iterations, going through a small mom and pop shop to having 500 employees here in Boca and 300,000 patients across the country by the time I graduated law school, and really got to hit the ground running. So it's been super unique in my legal practice. When I did decide, I graduated, even in law school, I didn't know that I wanted to be a healthcare attorney, but I graduated law school and I saw how much money my family's business was spending on outside legal counsel, as well as the fact that all these expert healthcare attorneys that they were utilizing around the country, all the laws were always changing. This was the time of the Affordable Care Act, and I got to really learn from the ground up with them on the healthcare regulations, combined with all of my experience over 10, 15 years in actually working in the actual DME business itself. So I got to bring a very unique perspective in going in-house and now in my private practice, and not only, wearing my legal hat first and foremost and advising on the laws, but I'm also aware of how my legal advice have your practical business implications. I'm going to get, unfortunately, my family's business went through, hell and high water, the good, the bad, the ugly. And about 10 years ago, this past January, was subjected to a very highly publicized federal raid and search and seizure warrant. So it went through a lot of stuff that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy, but activities that really pale in comparison to what I see in my practice on an everyday basis here, bringing me back to, everybody and their mothers calls themselves a compliance officer these days. And you got to, it takes a village to operate in the DME space appropriately, ensuring you have appropriate consultants, billing software personnel such as Nico Health, as well as healthcare regulatory counselors. But really, not all healthcare attorneys are made equally. Even at my own firm, we've got, healthcare attorneys who can't spell DME because it's not their specialty, right?
Yeah, what
so
would
folks
you say
really
is the
want to
difference?
ensure they.
What would you say is
What's
the
that now?
difference? The difference between like a healthcare attorney versus somebody who really specializes in DME. What makes that a bit different for you?
That's a good question. The laws that are applicable to DME suppliers, especially if you're a Medicare Part B enrolled DME POS supplier, you've got beyond your general healthcare laws, STARG, anti-kickback statute, which everyone's heard thrown around. We all loosely think we know about, at least have some understanding of. We've got our Medicare quality standards and your DME POS 30 supplier standards that not only do folks have to abide by to get their PTAN, their Medicare billing privileges, but also have to ensure they abide by those standards on a daily basis in order to maintain those billing privileges. And as I mentioned, the consequences, especially in the DME space compared to other healthcare providers where the barrier to entry is not as much for a DME provider. You don't have to be a licensed healthcare professional. Consequences for getting those supplier standards wrong is, you're lucky to hold on to your PTAN, hold on to the money that you've earned from Medicare, made from Medicare from the claims you submitted. And in the most egregious situations, especially with some of the crazy marketing activities we see in this space, lucky to, maintain your livelihood and independence because of some of the criminal law implications. So, a lot of folks are just unaware and jump into the space. And that's why, you got to look before you leap, especially in the DME healthcare space.
Yeah, that actually leads me to, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
I was
did
just
have a
curious about the
question. Go
Medicare.
ahead.
I'm sorry. I was curious about the marketing because I'm from the marketing side of things. What are you seeing
Sure.
that companies are doing from the healthcare marketing side that they might not realize is either illegal or on the border that they have to think about before, going to market?
That's a great question, Alex, and probably the biggest area of non-compliance that I regularly see, and the most with the most dire ramifications. Because if you market wrong in the healthcare space, we trigger federal anti-kickback and state anti-kickback laws that have felony criminal implications. So, essentially, a lot of folks, again, given the low barrier to entry, and you don't have to be a licensed healthcare provider to become the owner of a business, folks come in to the DME space that are experts in marketing and other industries, right? And they're used to compensating a third party in exchange for a referral. Well, in the healthcare space, in the DME space, that type of pay for play model, even if somebody is not the actual prescriber, is just a marketing company, it generally implicates these anti-kickback regulations. Right. So anytime, a major low-hanging fruit takeaway for any providers that are out there, if you're using a third-party marketing company, and there are a lot out there, and they are certainly not all made equally, nor do they all abide by the laws, you really have to look into what that company is doing, how they are marketing to prospective and using customers of your business, and how you are compensating that third-party marketing company in exchange for those services, and ensure that you're doing so in a way that cannot be construed as you're paying them based upon a per referral or value or volume of business that is sent your way from them.
I remember hearing at some point that the back braces were pretty big, where they were doing all
Sure.
these different types of like marketing ads and then getting patients, and then they were getting reimbursements for back braces that were insane reimbursements from Medicare. But I know that was pretty big in the space, right?
Yeah, I think you're referring to Operation Brace Yourself back in 2019. There was a over $1 billion fraud takedown. A lot of this involved marketing companies that were paid by DME providers and then used those funds to compensate telehealth prescribers who never had any existing relationship with these patients and were just writing prescriptions for orthotics, sometimes for, knee braces for patients that didn't even have legs. They were double amputees. And then at the end of the day, these DME providers submitting claims in response. The fraud has gotten more sophisticated as time has evolved, of course. And even in a situation where I'm seeing a lot of today, it could be somebody's existing healthcare prescriber, and we don't have the telehealth aspects that folks have learned to take a step back away from because of how highly publicized those fraud efforts were. These anti-kickback laws still apply. And over the past 16 months, seeing a lot of DME providers that are using marketing companies in the Middle East. Nothing wrong with using overseas providers, but we need to ensure what they're doing is correct, where a lot of these are a pay for play, X dollars per CGM referral or back brace, even though the primary care provider is involved. And that, from a regulator perspective, do not pass go, do not collect $200 type situation.
And go straight.
Got you. Yep.
We know where they go.
Michael, I know there's obviously bad actors out there, but I'm thinking about the everyday DME provider that, correct me if I'm wrong, do people usually come across your desk when it's kind of too late, or is there any percent of people that do a good job of being proactive? Because I'm sure there's common misconceptions about bringing on an attorney, and obviously there's a cost to everything, but do you think a lot of this could be avoided if they brought on these services? Or do you even offer services before any of this can even happen to help avoid it, I guess, is the more pointed question.
My favorite client is I just got my P-TAN. I haven't done anything yet. I'm a clean canvas, a blank slate, so that they can ensure that they are educated and informed on the laws, options, and risks before they dive in head first. There's a big misconception about attorneys and, even, hey, I've hired an attorney. You must have done something wrong, right?
Yep.
I like to tell my clients, unfortunately, I'm an attorney, not a magician. If somebody comes to me and they've already done something, I can't put the toothpaste back in the tube or the genie back in the bottle. We can do stuff to mitigate the past damages and put in the correct way of moving forward on a moving forward basis, but we can't wipe away all that potential liability. And the sob stories I get on a weekly basis of, hey, I got an audit and want you to look into it. And we go into the underlying marketing efforts. And these folks have paid millions of dollars to marketing companies illegally. And I got to tell them, hey, information they don't want to hear, but that they're paying me for. Not only should Medicare be refunded for every dollar that was paid out inappropriately, but you may have some criminal liability here. So, we can use whatever cliche we want. A penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure, but certainly proactive compliance efforts. If you're not paying up front, you're going to pay a lot more down the line, if you're lucky. So surround yourself with the good team, the accountants, the attorneys, the consultants that are not just healthcare related, but are specific in the DME space.
Yeah, sorry, Alex. What I was going to say was, so there's obviously a lot of new DMEs entering the space, a lot of new market participants. There's less headwinds now than there was, let's say, a couple years ago. And a lot of them, come to Nico Health as kind of the go-to software to one-stop shop. So I talk to a lot of new DMEs. So I would say, what is one piece of advice to give them? And then two is, what are some steps they can take to be proactive? Is it actually contacting someone like yourself directly, going through like the BOC? What are some good outlets for them to be proactive if they're starting up and, they're about to submit their first claim, for example? Where can they readily get this information? Because it's not that easy to Google all this stuff.
No, it's not. And oftentimes folks say, I wish Medicare made me take some type of training course especially on marketing compliance before, they let me do this, right? It was their fault. And most folks that come in, especially folks that are new in the DME space, it's the exception. It's the minority where somebody comes to me and I think that they have, inappropriate intent beyond. Everyone's looking to do the right thing. And there is a lot of misinformation out there, but there's a lot of good resources out there between your clearinghouses, Novitas and Palmetto GBA. They've got new information, what's new out there. CMS puts out the Medicare Learning Network that always has new information. And firms like mine, we all participate in different trade shows and events. I'll be up at the Florida Alliance of Home Care Providers up in Orlando this summer, where it's, folks from across the DME industry will be there lecturing on compliance in a lot of different ways. And, whether it's HIPAA compliance, DMEPOS supplier standard compliance. So make use of those resources. We all attend the Med Trades events, which have wonderful resources. Certainly get involved in your state associations. And the most important thing is to become aware of what you don't know, because that's the stuff that, or the stuff that we think we know that we don't know, because that's what comes back to ultimately bite us. But again, there are plenty of good DME consultants and good DME healthcare attorneys out there that will provide that, proactive advice for somebody getting into the industry of, at least here's the low hanging fruit of where we're seeing problems in the space.
Yep. And at a minimum, they can follow you on LinkedIn. I've seen some very informative videos
I'm
and entertaining.
But not as good as getting content out like you guys. But even the doodles, the silly doodles of,
was awesome.
Here's a DME provider, here's a marketing company, here's a prescriber. If you can connect the dots, we may have some questions there as far as that compensation circle. So
I think that was an older video, that doodle video, right?
An oldie but goodie. And I've been doing this stuff for 20 years in the DME space, 10 plus years as a healthcare attorney, and unfortunately, the cycles of non-compliance keep repeating themselves in different iterations, but it's still all the underlying, same fundamental issues that are taking place.
So
I'll get some new doodles out there.
Yeah, the doodles are great. So for better or for worse, you'll probably always have a job.
You know what? But it's it's an ever the good thing about being a healthcare attorney, especially in the DME space, as you guys see in what you're doing, there's never a dull moment. What is the rule today is an exception or is changed tomorrow. We've got 2026 competitive bidding on the horizon, which is certainly gonna inject a lot into this space. And so it's always just a matter of staying on top of the latest and greatest. And through myself and through Nico and yourselves, just getting that educational information out there, because it protects our clients, right? We want our clients to stay in business so that we can continue to service them. And if they're not aware of the laws that affect them, they're not going to be around very long.
Right. Well, and when you look at the DME landscape today, what are the biggest kind of like compliance blind spots you're seeing over and over again? Because I'm sure there's a bunch.
So, I mean, we harped upon the marketing compliance and relationships with marketers, any direct to consumer marketing, whether you're using a third party marketer or doing it internally. There are specific supplier standards, DMEPOS supplier standard number 11 regarding consent to contact a beneficiary, how it has to be specific to your company, branded to your company. Another area of non-compliance that I'm seeing a lot of over the past 24 months is state licensure requirements, especially pertaining to CGM requirements, which differ from your typical blood glucose monitoring supplies, insofar as many states categorize it as a legend device and may require a state-issued DME license for CGM, where that state normally doesn't require it for your, old school test strips and your BGM. The national supply or former national supplier clearinghouse, Palmetto GBA, their state licensure map, not necessarily up to date with respect to a lot of those CGM devices. So we're, issues with respect to ensuring state licenses for any products or equipment or supplies that folks are doing on a mail order basis. They have those, as well as required personnel, right? If somebody's billing for an OR02 prefabricated orthotic device, making sure that they have the appropriate type of, orthotic fitter that may be involved. So, marketing stuff, state license requirements, as well as, just going back to our quality and supplier standards overall, ensuring that they are taking responsibility for educating the patients on instruction and use of their equipment, and that they're maintaining their, required and normal office hours of operation. And then the last thing I want to mention on, which is low-hanging fruit, but most people don't come to think of, is collection of patient financial responsibility, and how, informing a patient that, we're going to take what your insurance company pays in full, or even just continuing to service a patient while not collecting or attempting to collect patient financial responsibilities, co-pays and deductibles, that can be considered a kickback. It looks like you're doing the patient a favor, right? We're just trying to make it more affordable to you, but it's, the regulators unfortunately don't look at it.
I think that last one has to be a big one. A lot of people don't think about it. I know in our software, we've actually developed a lot of features to help calculate patient responsibility, help charge it as much as they probably don't want to. And, more and more people pushing to get the card on file, which is normal in most businesses, and making it easier and less friction for the patient. Obviously they want to help as many people as possible, but I feel like that's like a blind spot of all the ones you just mentioned.
That type of solution is invaluable, Wayne. I can't tell my clients how many, especially in the DME space, to the extent you can, push off or utilize some type of third party or console or software or mechanism that keeps track of patient financial responsibility, even sends out automated invoices or helps you keep track of the calling. I mean, why take on that additional obligation yourself if there are systems out there that can make providers' lives easier and they can focus on what they do best, taking care of patients.
Absolutely. And actually, just a quick change of topic, just a thought that I had. I know you mentioned BOC earlier. You're on the board of BOC. Can you just tell us a little bit about BOC? I think that's helpful for the listeners to kind of understand those type of, governing bodies or accreditation businesses and how they can help them and what part you play in that.
Yeah, so so BOC is one of the 8 Medicare deemed and approved accreditation organizations, for which if you're an enrolled Medicare Part B DME provider, unless you are exempt from accreditation, which 99% of folks are not exempt, you have to be accredited by one of the 8 Medicare approved folks. Board of Certification and Accreditation is one of those 8 Medicare approved entities. We probably have a lot of mutual clients that are accredited by BOC. There are others out there, the Joint Commission, the compliance team, ACHC. I serve on the board of directors with the Board of Certification and Accreditation and can attest firsthand as far as how they do things and the partnership that they have with their DME providers. But all accreditation organizations, they're Medicare contractors. They have an obligation with Medicare first and foremost to ensure that any facilities they accredit are abiding by the quality standards, and Medicare holds them to the fire with respect to that, and they take those obligations very seriously. But secondarily, they're a partner in your success. They want to work with you to ensure that you can become accredited. You can pass Medicare inspection to get your PTAN, and that come 3 years down the line when you're up for a reaccreditation or renewal of your PTAN, that you're there to get it and you are abiding by the quality standards, the DMEPOS supplier standards. So all of these accreditation organizations, partners in your success, should be part of your arsenal and the village of the resources you tap into to ensure that you're doing things appropriately.
Awesome.
Great question on the AOs. They're vital.
Yeah, awesome. People ask me all the time. Usually when they come to us, they've already have started the accreditation process, but it's great to see, like, from a legal aspect, that you're involved with these companies as well. It's awesome.
Absolutely. I have one more question before we go to rapid fire. I saw that you said you want to kind of like reinvent.
This wasn't rapid fire?
No. We have an official rapid fire at the end of every podcast episode.
Bring it on.
You say that you want to kind of like reinvent the legal experience. What does that mean for you in practice?
I think we kind of touched upon it earlier. It's really changing the perception of why folks have an attorney and what attorneys do. When I say, first and foremost, I say I'm a healthcare attorney, people think I'm an ambulance chaser or a personal injury attorney, or that I defend doctors against malpractice. That's not what I do, at all what I do. I provide advice to healthcare business owners and medical professionals on compliantly entering into, growing, expanding and perhaps selling their practices. So as far as changing the perception, it really goes back to what Wayne mentioned. I don't know if he's that way or that way on my screen, but what Wayne mentioned is kind of the reluctance of people and the perception of, hey, if you got an attorney, you must be doing something wrong. That's the case some of the time for the folks that come to me and have been operating in a way that they shouldn't have been operating, and I hate to be the bad guy, but I'm going to do my job and, tell folks how it is and the laws that apply. But, changing the perception is, you don't have to spend $1 zillion. You don't have to have crazy barriers to entry. We make it very affordable to get that type of education. And again, it's, ensuring that you're educated in this space before you dive into it. And that perception of having an attorney can be a very, very good thing. Prevent you from ever having to get an attorney in response and being reactive. Be proactive.
Awesome. Thanks for that, man.
Very,
That's
very
awesome.
well said. Very well said. So now it's time for the real rapid fire.
The real one. Here we go.
These are easy.
Drum
That was a harder question. These are very light. So I'm going to run you through kind of one or the other. So I'm actually reading some of these now. Probably not the best for an attorney.
I'm going to multiple choice. If I have to abstain, I'll let you know.
First one's funny. Contract or handshake? I'm assuming I know the answer if I'm asking an attorney.
Man, I'm a handshake guy. My father always told me, shake a hand, look the person in the right eye, double-handed handshake. You can feel into somebody's soul that way. That's why but from a legal perspective, contracts, everything in writing and documentation. From a personal perspective, double-handed handshake.
I'm sure there's been cases out there where they're fighting over a handshake in some legal sense.
Oh, I mean, business partners, forget about it. No handshake deals.
Yeah, I heard
it's very easy to date and get married, much easier to get divorced.
Yeah, right
Have a
on.
partnership agreement in place so everyone's on the same page.
I saw it somewhere where, not to go down a rabbit hole, but it was like somebody texted someone something about business and they responded with a thumbs up emoji, and that was like technically a binding contract somehow.
I don't know that in court.
Yeah, I don't know how that ended, but that was the headline.
The Gen Z.
Second
there
one,
we go.
If you have one, favorite courtroom TV show.
I have so much legal drama in my office on a daily basis that I abstain from that one.
Abstain.
I hear Suits is good, but too stressful.
Yeah, yeah, you have enough of it on a day-to-day basis. What's the hardest part of being a healthcare attorney?
That's a great question. The hardest part of being a healthcare attorney is really staying abreast of all the updates and changes to the laws so that we can properly advise our clients and to ensure that we have a narrow focus and stay in our lane within the healthcare space. I've been at firms with dozens of healthcare attorneys who can't spell DME, as I mentioned, because, of the nuances that really apply here.
All right. Well, we have a long list here. I just picked out 3, and that's it, I promise. This one's easy. Coffee or cocktails?
Coffee gets me through the day, so coffee. There's always times for cocktails, but business first and party later.
Yeah. Most underrated place in Florida?
Most underrated place in Florida. Oh, that's a good question. Most underrated. I'm a Southeast Florida guy, kind of through and through, which is kind of like a mini New York these days. The buzz has been getting, crazier and crazier. Delray Beach, where I live, is still kind of a nice little gem, the village by the sea. I try to, take advantage of all the water sports, paddleboarding, scuba diving, whenever I get a moment off of not only my day and night job here, but also taking care of the kids and the family. But, again, I would say the beautiful reefs that we have for scuba diving that are just a mile offshore.
That's incredible.
Good answer.
And last one, I think we asked everyone this question, just based off what their profession is. But if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be?
If I wasn't a lawyer, what would I be?
A scuba diver?
Since something.
It sounds pretty nice.
Something with nature, something giving back. Professional scuba diver. I love all types of extreme sports, so I'd probably be a bum on a mountain in Colorado.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got.
Perfect.
Alex, anything else?
No, I think that's it. That wraps us up. Michael, thanks for joining the show today. That's been a lot of interesting insights for all the listeners. And if you aren't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel. Mike, thanks again for coming. This has been great. Let's do it again.
Yep. Thanks,
My
Mike.
absolute pleasure, guys. Can't wait. Be good, everyone.
Thank you. See ya.